Hi, this is Oscar. Welcome to another exciting know-how for ServiceNow. This time I'm going to demonstrate how you can easily start, stop, or restart a Windows service. You probably guessed it, we're going to use IntegrationHub in order to take action remotely over a Windows service. First, I will demonstrate this integration, and later I will explain the things you need in order to achieve this incredible feature in the ServiceNow platform. So restarting a service remotely can save an incredible amount of time with a click of a button. And the things I will show you is first to enable Windows Service Discovery, then configure some UI actions and fields in the Windows Service table, then create a flow to start, stop, or restart actions using Flow Designer. Then I'll show you a custom PowerShell action in Flow Designer. And finally, we will have to see the PowerShell script to actually start, stop, and restart the Windows service. Okay, I have here, I have opened the Windows Server CI. This is actually the Windows Server you are seeing at the right-hand side. It is a Windows 2012 R2. It's a virtual machine. And I have enabled the Windows Services related lists in this form and also through Discovery in order to get all the Windows services. I'm going to search for one particular service, which is Spooler. So I'm going to open this Windows service in a new tab right here. So this is the Windows service. Its name is Spooler. Out of the box, you have the configuration item. So I just brought it into the form to see the name of the given server or the host name or the computer name. And then we have the out-of-the-box service state, which will tell us whether it's running or if it's stopped. I created one field called action. This field could be hidden or at least in read-only mode, but for now, it is editable just for the sake of this demo. And this action field has three particular actions: restart, start, or stop. And actually the values of this action field are driven by these buttons. You see, because the service state is running, that means I can restart the service or stop the service, right? And finally, I created a word notes, which is a journal field. And then we will start seeing down here all the information that it's being captured in this particular field. So as you might guess, once I click the button, the action will get updated. Then that will trigger the flow that I've created behind the scenes, which will run an action to run a PowerShell in this particular server. And I'm actually going to stop the service for this given server. So what I'm gonna do here quickly is in order to see that we are actually doing it, so I'm gonna run this PowerShell command. So this is the spooler, so I see that is running, right? And what I'm gonna do is to stop it from ServiceNow. So I'm gonna click the stop button. Okay, so there's info message that an integration has been triggered to stop the service spooler, which is hosted by the name of the computer or the server. As you are seeing on the right hand side from running, now it just refreshed to stop. So we successfully have stopped the service in this Windows server. As you can see, the flow designer just updated some of the fields. The action, now it is blank. The service state now says it is stop. So you can do that, right? I mean, if you stop the service, why not to refresh the service state? And the word nodes, but in order to see the word nodes, we need to reload the form. And this is going to give us some logs to tell us what exactly happened. So I'm including the timestamp when it got initiated, the stop action on the service spooler, hosted by the name of the computer. Then the spooler was running and it was preparing to stop, and then it just stopped. And that's what we are seeing reflected on the Windows server. So now what I'm gonna do is to start the service. So I'm gonna click on Start Service button. See that the action says start, right? The button just changed the value of the action, and this behind the scenes will trigger the flow. So in just a few seconds, we are seeing that now the action is blank, the service state is running, and you can see right here in the PowerShell command window from stop to running. Right? That means that our PowerShell behind the scenes that is being called by the flow, it actually executed successfully. Okay, so I'm going to reload the form again, and we're gonna see a spooler was stopped and it was preparing to start, and then now spooler is running, and so the service state got updated accordingly as well. So now finally I'm going to demonstrate the restart service, which is nothing but stopping and starting the service immediately. So I'm gonna hit the restart service button. Again, I'm just having this info message on top of the screen on the form. We have to wait for a few seconds. We can see that the spooler is still running. And now we see the action is blank. The service state is running. Why? Because first it stopped and then it started again. So if I reload, that's what it just happened. This particular print in the PowerShell command screen has a delay of 1 second. So if the service got restarted in less than a second, that's why we're just seeing running, and we never saw the stop and then running again, because this has a delay of 1 second. And I'm pretty sure that the commands on the PowerShell run in less than a second, right? So you see that basically it's nothing but time change. So, but on the logs we get to see the spooler was running, it was preparing to restart, then at some point it got stopped, and then in just milliseconds it stood up again, the service, and is running again. So this is how simple, with a click of a button, you can take action over a Windows service, either to restart, to stop, or to start the particular service. As mentioned in the beginning, first we need to enable the Windows Service Discovery. So on your ServiceNow instance, you go to Discovery Definition, then go to CI Classification, click on Windows, and then look for the particular Windows server that you want to configure. I mean, you could potentially apply this configuration to all the Windows servers that you are planning to discover, because you want to restart services from those Windows servers. But for the sake of this demo, I have a Windows 2012 server. So this is the one that I just configured. Out of the box, you don't get the Windows services proof included in this related list. So you will have to click on Edit and make sure to add the WMI Runner Windows Services proof in order to obtain all the Windows services running on the specific Windows Server version. So this is the first step you need to do to include the Windows services proof in this trigger proofs related list. This is going to allow you to have on your Windows Server CI the related list Windows services. Out of the box again, this Windows services related list is not listed, so you'll have to configure your form to include this related list Windows services. And here you will find all the Windows services running on that given Windows server. The next step is to configure some fields in the Windows service form. So I have opened again the spooler service. This is where we were seeing the logs coming from that PowerShell script that is actually, taking action on the Windows service. So the fields, again, I added the out-of-the-box configuration item to the form. I mean, you don't need to, but in sake for the demonstration, I just make it visible. The service state is out of the box on the form, and again, you see here the running and stop. I created this action field, which is a choice list with three options: restart, start, and stop. So the values of the action are driven by the buttons above, so restart service or stop service. And finally, I added this word notes, which is a journal field in order to get all the login information coming from the PowerShell script. So the UI actions, first the start service, it's a form button. It's show to only in update. The condition is to display this button when the service state is stop, right? If the service is stop, then I want to see the button to start the service. And what it's doing is on the custom field u_action, it will assign the value start, it will update, and we will add the information message on top of the form. The same for stop service is a form button only to show an update, and this one will show up only when the service state is running. And same on the UI action, it is assigning the value stop, and then we're seeing the info message on top of the form. And finally, restart is the same, but it is going to be displayed only when the service state is running. And then on the UI action, it will say restart, it will assign the value. So that's pretty much it on the configuration of the Windows service form with the buttons and the fields. The next step is to create a flow using Flow Designer. This flow will allow us to call the Windows service action that would start, stop, or restart the Windows service. At a high level, we are going to trigger this flow when the Windows service record gets updated, specifically when the action is either restart, start, or stop. Then we're going to call the Windows service action, which is going to run a PowerShell script to start, stop, or restart the Windows service. That will return us some output, and if we double check and see that something happened, an error occurred, that means the PowerShell couldn't run successfully. Then what we are going to do is to update the Windows Service record, setting the error message from the error returned by PowerShell, and we are going to remove the action value or making it blank. Otherwise, then it means the PowerShell runs successfully. Then we're going to set the word nodes with the logs information coming from the PowerShell. Then we're going to check if the action was a start or a restart in order to make the service state equals running. If not, that means that the service state should be stop. So we want to update the service state once we restarted or started the Windows service, or we want to make it stop if we wanted to stop the Windows service. At the end, we need to make the action equals blank again because we need to reset the action field in case we want to take action over the service again later on. So I'm going to open one of these one by one. So we see that is the Windows Service table, whether the action is restart, start, or stop. This trigger will run for every update. Then the Windows Service action. This is going to take three mandatory fields or inputs. One is the service name, which is actually the name of the Windows Service record, like Spooler. Then we need to pass the service action, which is hold on the action field in the Windows Service record as well. And finally, the computer, which is coming from the Windows Service record. From the configuration item field, we can pull the name of the computer or the name of the CI. Then if the error occurred, that means we got an error message returned by the PowerShell. If it's not blank, that means we are having some sort of error. If you see on the Windows Service Action step, we get three outputs. One is the result, the error message, and the Windows error code. Whatever output is returned by the PowerShell script will be held in the result output or variable. So any output on the console, anything, any login, it will come up in the result. So here we're checking for the error message. If it's not blank, that means we got an issue. Then if everything runs successfully, that means the PowerShell could run without issues. Then on the word nodes, we are having all the results, and that's exactly what we are seeing in the Windows Service record on the word nodes when the service got restarted or started or stopped. That's what we get, and we get it from the result output from the PowerShell. Then we're checking whether the action is a start or a restart in order to set the service state equals running. So if we're restarting the service or starting a service, then it makes sense to make the service state equals running and not wait for discovery to get it. If it's not, then means that our action was to stop the service, and so we need to reflect that on the service state as well. So we choose stop. And finally, we need to make the action equals blank because we need to reset the action field for the next time we want to take action over the Windows service by using one of the buttons. So this is the overall flow of the process that needs to run every time we interact with one of the UI actions on the service form in order to start, stop, or restart the Windows service. So let's take a deep dive into the Windows service action. And the inputs that we mentioned before, we have the service name, the service action, the computer name. These three inputs are mandatory. We need them in order to run successfully the PowerShell script. What are the outputs? The outputs are just the result, the error message, and the Windows error code. So out of the box, ServiceNow offers those three outputs directly from the PowerShell step: the output, the error message, and the Windows error code. And all of this is passed through and sent as an output for this particular action. So let's take a look on the PowerShell step. All right, so connection details. So we're going to use a connection alias. And here I will explain in a minute more deeply on how to configure the connection alias. But basically we're using an orchestration alias. And the remoting type is run on a meet server or have your script establish a remote session. Okay, so on the script details, the script type is a meet server script file. The meet server script file is action Windows service PS1. Automatically it will load the script path. And then our input variables are the following: the service name, the computer name, and service action. These input variables are actually variables that are being used by the script, and I'll show you in a minute how the script looks like. So what we're taking is from the inputs of the action, we are passing the values from the input of the action into the variables of this given script. Okay, now I'll show you how to load this script. So I'm gonna head back. I'll open the Meet server application, and then we need to go to script files. Then we need to create here a new script file, which I already created, called Action Windows Service. So this is a PowerShell file created for the Meet server. So you need to create one, give it the name that you want, make the parent as PowerShell, make a brief description. This is to start, stop, or restart a Windows service. And in the script field, just paste the entire script that you will find below this video. Or if you're watching this on the community, you'll get to see this code below, the entire code of this PowerShell. So just copy, paste it, and save this record. There is one important thing here to understand. So when you create this record, this script file, actually the Meet server will push, or ServiceNow will push this file to all the Meet servers that you have connected to your instance. So here is not too good to see what the script is doing. So I'm going to open this script and I will show you the place where this script resides on the Meet server. All right, what you're seeing here is my diagram of configuration. So I have a Windows 10 computer, which is running a virtual machine with Windows Server 2012. So the Windows 10 machine has a mid server 01 installed, and the VM, the Windows Server 2012, it also has a mid server 02 installed. And when I create that action Windows service file for the mid server in ServiceNow, ServiceNow will be in charge of pushing this file to the mid servers that are connected to your instance. In other words, the file will be pushed to the mid server 01 and the mid server 02. You have also a copy of that Powershell file. Now I'm in the Windows Server machine on the VM, and this is the mid server 02. So I'm going to open the agent, and my file, I will find it on the scripts folder. I open that one, and remember that we created this with the parent PowerShell. So on the PowerShell folder, I will find the Action Windows Service PS1. So I right click, I click on Edit. This would open the PowerShell ICE, and I now can explain what is exactly doing this PowerShell. So the very first function that we have is to get a date in the typical format of year, month, date, hours, minutes, and seconds. This is just to see how much time it took to restart or start or stop a Windows service. Then we have another function to check if the given service exists. Then we have another function to get the service. Then we have the get service status function, which actually validates if the service exists and provide the status of the service. Notice that here we'll start writing using the write host, which is nothing but printing on the command or on the command prompt if we run this. And all that output is going to be stored in the result output variable from the action in the flow designer. So I have is service running, checking whether the given service is running just by checking the status equals running or the status equals stop to know if the given service is stop. Then here I'm writing that I'm initiating the action on the service, and then I'm given the name and the computer name. If the service exists, then do what we need to do on the stop condition, do what we need to do on the start condition, and do what we need to do on the restart condition. So the service action equals restart. We're going to check if the service is running. If it is, then we're going to write on the output that the given service is running and is preparing to restart. Then what we're actually doing is to get the service and stop the service. Then again, we get the service status, which is going to print that the service is stopped. Immediately, we are going to get the service again, but now we're going to start the service. And once again, we get the service status that is going to show that is running. Otherwise, if the service is stopped, well, we just mention on the output that it's already stopped and is going to prepare to start. And we are going to get the service and start the service. If an action is not stop, start, or restart, then we just print that the action parameter is missed or invalid. Otherwise, if by some reason the service name is not found, well, we will print that as well. So this is the PowerShell script that you will find below this video in the community. So you can get it, download it, and load it into your instance and start playing with this really nice feature using PowerShell to have an action over the Windows service. Coming back again to the PowerShell step, let's dig in on the connection using the connection alias to understand how do we need to configure this connection alias to make it work the PowerShell. So if you go back to the navigator, just type IntegrationHub, then go to connection and credential aliases. So here I have created one connection called orchestration. So this orchestration, I just make it a connection type basic. By default, I have left the default retry policy out of the box, which is the SFTP. But this is sufficient to make it work. So this is the orchestration connection, and then the actual connection is the PowerShell connection. This is where you can define if you have multiple environments, right? You have dev, you have test, you have production. This is where you can have multiple connections and just keep one of those connections active for this connection and credential aliases. So in this one, consider that this PowerShell connection is actually the dev environment. So this PowerShell connection is using the credential orchestration credential. The connection alias is orchestration, and the host is actually the computer name of my virtual machine, the Windows Server 2012. So what it's going to do is to connect to this computer in order to run the PowerShell. So for more details on the credential, if we open the credentials and we open the orchestration credential, here there are a couple things to notice. One is that I'm using the Meet Server service account. So by checking this box, it means that the credential will be represented by the Meet Server service account. So that's why there's no need for a user and password for this orchestration credential. It would actually take the one that I have configured at the Meet Server in the Windows Server machine. And the second thing to notice is that I have specified that this credential applies to this specific Meet server. In my environment, I have, remember, a Windows 10 machine, and then I have a Windows Server 2012. So this is the host, the Windows 10 is the host of the virtual machine, but both of them are in totally different subnet. They cannot communicate each other. So that's why each individually has its own Meet server. So what I'm doing is that the credential that I have configured in the Meet server over the Windows server, it is a credential that works only for this box, for this Windows Server 2012. So the Meet server is configured with the credentials for the Windows machine, the Windows Server machine. That's why I'm making that credential only applicable to the Meet Server 02, because that credential only works for the Windows Server 2012. It doesn't work for the Windows 10. Then this is why I have made this Windows credential, orchestration credential, only available for the Meet Server 2. So this is how the orchestration credential will be used by the connection to gain access to the host, and then the host will actually execute the PowerShell script, which remotely will establish a session to the particular computer name or Windows server that we mentioned on the input for the computer name. That's why from your Meet server, you can start, stop, or restart a Windows service from any other Windows server that you have in your network. So this Meet server will connect remotely to that other machine using most likely a domain account, which all the privileges needed in order to run that action over that Windows service. All right, well, that's all I want to demonstrate this time. So I hope you enjoyed with me how you can start, stop, or restart the Windows service using IntegrationHub. So remember to like this video. Don't forget to go to the ServiceNow community to download the PowerShell that will allow you to restart the Windows service. And please leave your comments. Till the next time.